Hi and welcome to another video here on my channel, Morbid History. I haven't been able to do much this week, but I thought I'd get this video down since it's almost the end of Spooktober and I want to do something fun. And I have already written it down here, so let's get to it. In today's video, we're talking about the Draug. Draug. It is not a ghost and not a ghoul. It's more like the historic version of a zombie, or a mix of a zombie vampire. The Draug is a really old creature from Nordic mythology and into folklore. The Draug is what we call here in Sweden a likspöke. A likspöke is translated roughly into corpse ghost. And the difference between a Draug and a ghost is, of course, that it's a reanimated corpse. It has a body and it rises from its grave. What makes a Draug? Well, a Draug is usually a person who was very bad when he or she was alive. A very mean-spirited, greedy, jealous kind of person. Usually their personality was so bad that they couldn't let it go even in death, and therefore came up from its grave as a Draug just to make life miserable. It was the jealousy of the living, the ones that had what they had lost, that drove them. It was greed, jealousy, and bloodlust. They could be so jealous they would even climb into the graves of other people who were buried with riches and just stay there to guard the money or the jewelry or whatever they had down there. So what did they look like? They were basically a bit bigger than they were in real life. They would get superhuman strength, and they were either like death blue, corpse white, or necrotic black. They were bloated and hideous creatures that smelt of decomposition. In Nordic mythology, and even in modern times, they are usually depicted they're usually drawn as a kind of a undead Viking, but that wasn't always the case, of course. They would be farm people, they would be just anyone really, as long as they were bad in life, they'd be bad after death too. A way to stop these Draugs were to put a pole into their hearts or cut their head off and place it between their legs. Draugs had, of course, some superhuman abilities, like they could go into the dreams of the living. They could throw curses on the living and make them die from bad luck. And of course, just kill people from their superhuman strength. In some stories, they were immune to weapons. I know someone commented in my last video about that, but they were immune to any kind of weapon, and only a folk hero, someone super strong and courageous, were able to beat them down back into the ground. One of those stories was Gritte and Glom. Gritte was a folk hero who was known to be super strong, of course, as they usually are, and he has a big epic tale about him, and his downfall was actually a Draug. The story goes that Gritte went to a farmhouse where a farmer was having issues with a sheep herder that had died a few years back. He had been a very evil person, and of course when he died he turned into a Draug that would go and wreak havoc in the little town where they lived, especially on the farm where this farmer lived. Grete went there to be a hero, of course, and while he was sleeping in one of the farmer's rooms, he heard some footsteps outside and the climbing of someone up on the roof. The Draug would then begin to ride the house, because that was actually a thing that they could do too. He sat up there and rode the house like a horse, making it so no one could sleep, of course. After a while, the Draug stopped and climbed down and opened the door into the farmhouse. Grete was lying there in a bed, and Glom came in and pulled him out of his bed. A big fight ensued. Grete, of course, was very strong himself, but Glom was stronger, and after a while he managed to pull out Grete out of the house. The moonlight came down upon Glom, and Grete saw his hideous eyes rolling around inside of his eye sockets. In the story it's told that this was one of the only times that Grete had ever been scared. While he was losing his strength and almost got killed by Glom, Glom cursed Grete. I'm gonna read a small part of Glom's curse on Grete, and I'll put a translation beside it. Väl haver du hittills gjort dig frädjad av dina bedrifter, men hädanefter ska du av dem endast få dråpmål och fredlöshet, och allt vad du än förteger ska bringa dig ofärd och olycka. Fredlös var det du, som sagt, och ständigt blir det din lott att väljas ensam. Den förbannelsen lägger jag även på dig, och att du alltjämt ska se framför dig dessa mina ögon, sådana det nu stirra, och skall för den skull ensligheten synas dig ännu mera osäll. Allt detta ska sist giva dig döden. As soon as Glom had uttered those words, Grete got his strength back and killed Glom. And just as Glom's curse, Grete was never the same. He was scared of the dark and to be alone, and he never got stronger. He did survive though, for many years to come, but he was never the same. Another story is more personal for me. It's about Bockstensmannen. Ever since I was a kid, we used to go to this fortress here in southern Sweden called Varbergs fästning. In there you could see a skeleton lying in a little glass box. This was Bockstensmannen. I was always intrigued by the big wooden pole coming out of this skeleton's chest. The story is that Bockstensmannen was a rich man way back in the 1300s that was murdered and then buried in a swamp. He had 3 poles sticking out of his body, and the reason for that, they did not want him to come back as a Draug. We don't know much else about Bockstensmannen, but we have, with new technology, gotten a picture of what he would look like, and this is it. Another story we have is not like the usual Draug, but it's still like the corpse ghost that we talk about here now. It's about a woman who died in medieval times. Here in Sweden we don't have like open caskets anymore, but back in these days they did. So they placed her body in her coffin inside the church for a few nights. Every morning when coming to see her lying there, they noticed that her socks have gotten super dirty and holy, and yeah, like she had been up during the night. This prompted one of her sons to sleep inside of the church one night to see what was going on. At the ghost hour after 12, he noticed some heavy footsteps coming into the church. It was a Draug coming from the churchyard. It walked up to the mother's coffin, took her out, and they started dancing inside the church. They danced and danced and danced for many hours, until the boy, the son, got his courage up and screamed something like, "Only God is able to bring us up at the end times," or something like that. I'm not religious, so I don't know what happens there, but he shouted something about God anyway. And suddenly they stopped, and the mother walked up to the coffin and never got up again. And this shows that, like, in later years, after Norse mythology and all that, when Christendom became important in history, even to the point that it would scare the ghosts and the Draugs by just mentioning God's or Jesus' name. And our last story is about a farmer who was also, of course, a very mean man. When he was lying on his deathbed, he made his wife promise that he would be buried standing up at the entrance of their home. And once he died, his wife was too scared to do anything else, so she buried him there, standing at the door, under the door frame, because he wanted to stand there and watch over his house, as he did when he was alive. This wasn't a good plan, though. One of the things that we need to know is that you should never bury someone standing or sitting, because then they will come up again. So he did. He came back, black and bloated to the size of an ox. As we said, he had been a very mean man. In life, of course, he was meaner now. He made everyone sick. He spread bad things, just bad things. He killed people, the usual, until they dug him up, burned his corpse, burnt the entire house down, and moved the heck away from there. It was the only way to stop him. So what did we learn from that? Well, if someone is really mean, don't bury them sitting or standing. And maybe put a pole through them too, for good measure. So yeah, that was this video. I hope you liked it and found it informative. I love all your guys' comments. It is just really makes me smile, a huge smile. Thanks to my Norwegian pal, who always leaves the best comments. They're long and just so funny, and you're too kind. Thank you. I'm still thankful that I'm such a tiny channel that I can actually go through the comments and reply to all of you, so thank you. Did you find anything especially interesting? Let me know too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, yay! Thanks for being here. Mwah! By the way, look, it's so nice and cozy outside. I love it. So autumny. I wish I wasn't such a depressy, stressy boo. So I'd actually be able to go outside. Soon. Soon. Oops.